Farms of the future in Samarahan. Samarahan enjoys broad development prospects. Construction industry losing workers to plantations. Those are the headlines for tonight. I'm Lorenzo Isaac and this is TVS Nightline. Sarawak is developing and promoting modern agriculture, aiming to combine technology and utilizing its rich resources in farming. This is in line with the state's aim to become a net food exporter by 2030. It's such a total of 1.5 billion ringgit for Integrated Regional Samarahan Development, IRSDA, has been set aside for such development to take place in Samarahan.
Abang Johari said Samarahan is suitable for food crops, including rice, because of its rich alluvial soil. And due to the area's potential for food production, the program will be set up infrastructure for modern farming. Meanwhile, as of the second quarter of 2022, RISDA has introduced 608 projects to help spur on the development of Samarahan Division.
Alhamdulillah, Risda tu sudah melulus 600 projek yang bernilai 1.1496 juta. Sudah dilulus. 200 dah siap. Ngikut Datuk Abu Bakar nyata 200 dah siap.
Abang Johari further explained that out of the 201 projects that are completed, 86 are under implementation. While 200 projects are still in the planning processes, while 121 other projects will commence in the third quarter of this year and the first quarter of next year. At the same time, Abang Johari assured the project's plan are in accordance with the timeframe set. On the same note, Integrated Regional Samarahan Development Agency RISDA Chairman Datuk Sri Abdul Karim Rahman Hamzah said the Premier of Sarawak, Datuk Patinggi Tan Sri Abang Johari Tun Openg, established RISDA in 2018 as a gift. The Asajaya Assemblyman pointed out that Abang Johari wields the power to transform an area he so chooses.
That's where ilham yang amat berhormat tu. Kadang-kadangnya kita fikirnya dah jauh ke depan mikir rangka. Dan the other thing yang saya nak bertanya sempadan sampai sini. Sempadan saja. Jadinya tahu sampai ke belah Sebuyo, Semunjan. That's where kita lebih kurang tahu tentang sempadan Risda ini. Itu hanya dalam bulan November 2018. Hari ini baru 2022. Belum jauh. Dan dalam jangka masa yang singkat itu kita telah dilanda oleh COVID-19. Banyak perkara-perkara tidak dapat dijalankan. Tapi dalam keadaan yang singkat itu, saya boleh dikira lama juga dah jadi wakil rakyat 4 penggal lebih. Pernah saya melihat ledakan pembangunan yang begitu banyak sekali.
Abdul Karim hopes that the development projects by the state government will be able to improve the socio-economic of its people. Previously, the formation of RISDA was announced on November 12, 2018 to spur on development in Samarahan Division. With an allocation of 1.5 billion ringgit, it became operational in 2019, but was only officially launched today by the Premier of Sarawak.
A significant increase in the price of crude palm oil in this current time has successfully attracted labourers from other sectors, including the construction sector, causing labour shortages in other industry. Senior Works Minister Datuk Sri Fadilah Yusof said contractors involved in several Pan-Borneo Highway project packages were also affected, losing about 30% of their workforce.
Fadilah said the problem needs to be resolved immediately to ensure that the project does not experience further delays.
Jadi ini merupakan market forces dan kadang-kadang kerajaan tak boleh mengambil tindakan ke atas ini. Jadi pihak industri sendirilah kena memikir bagaimana mereka boleh menjaga pekerja mereka dengan memberi tawaran termasuklah benefit-benefit yang boleh mengekalkan pekerja itu bekerja dengan mereka. Ini terletak kepada industri itu sendiri.
He said so when met at the FT Roadpedia Sarawak tour program at Selangor Bridge on Friday. Meanwhile, one of the contractors involved in the Pan Borneo project, John Lee Chin, said his company is now trying to source labor from Kuching to complete the bridge project.
As I said to Minister, a lot of our workers here, those who had got the approved AP, they've been they're attracted by engaging the plantation. That's why they get a better pay. That's why we cannot stop them to do so.
According to John, he currently needs an additional employee of around 80 to 100 people in order to complete the construction works according to the completion date set in the schedule.
The Deputy Premier of Sarawak, Dato' Ahmad Awang Teng Ali Hassan, on Thursday paid the Sarawak Trade and Tourism Office status in Singapore a courtesy call. The 2-hour visit was then continued with a briefing by status officers. The Sarawak Trade and Tourism Office Singapore status serves as a one-stop centre for investment and businesses as well as tourism players in Singapore to learn more about Sarawak on a daily basis. Also present during the courtesy call was the advisor of the Ministry of International Trade, Industry and Investment, Mintred, Dato' Naroden Majais, Acting Permanent Secretary of Mintred, Zulkarnain Masron, and Special Duty Officer of Mintred, Dato' Eng Liao Soon. The government has agreed to abolish the mandatory death penalty and to substitute it with other sentences which are subject to the discretion of the court. The decision was reached after a report was presented on the substitute sentences for the mandatory death penalty at the Cabinet meeting last Wednesday, June 8.
Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Parliament and Law, Dato' Sri Dr. Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar said the government has also agreed in principle to accept and take note of the recommendations made by the Special Committee on Substitute Sentences for the Mandatory Death Penalty as explained in the report. The study would be carried out in collaboration with the Attorney General's Chambers, the Legal Affairs Division of the Prime Minister's Department, and other relevant ministries and departments. Wan Junaidi said this was to ensure that all amendments to the relevant laws would take into account the principles of proportionality and constitutionality of any proposal made to the government later. In addition, the government will also carry out a feasibility study on the direction of the criminal justice system in the country, such as having pre-sentencing procedures, a sentencing council, and a sentencing guideline. Also to be studied is the setting up of a law commission, prison reform, and the execution of sentences based on restorative justice.
Sarawakian lawyer Shankaram Asnani welcomes the government's announcement on abolishing the mandatory death penalty. Speaking to TVS, he described the decision as a progressive move as he contended there is no credible evidence that the death penalty deters crime more effectively. Shankar said, however, the judges must have the discretion to sentence offenders based on the facts of each case so as to ensure that justice was served.
But of course, there are certain cases where, the discretion of the judge ought to be retained where a crime of sheer cruelty and brutality, then the death sentence must be maintained. But however, like in drug cases, there are a lot of drug mules, people who are just mere transporters and they face the death penalty. This is really very...
Commenting further, Shankar said that the legal system in Malaysia should be in line with many progressive countries so that certain laws can be amended.
That is very, very important because a lot of our laws are archaic and we've got to move expeditiously and in consonance with the international arena where laws are amended and all that very fast, you see. Unlike in our place here, there are a lot of things that are lacking behind. So we got to improve. We got to be very competitive also, like any other countries in the world that is progressing very well.
Meanwhile, a special committee reviewing alternative penalties for the mandatory death penalty also welcomes the government's decision. Its committee member, Edmund Buntai, said to date, over 1,000 inmates in line for the death sentence needs to be reviewed.
For many years, we've been fighting to abolish the death penalty. This is the first step to make it not mandatory so that the judges retain the discretion to sentence to death penalty or not. So we leave it to the hands of the judges and the facts of the case.
Earlier today, Law Minister Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar said Putrajaya had agreed to abolish the mandatory death penalty, giving judges discretion in sentencing. The Cabinet had also agreed for a further study to be carried out on the proposed substitute sentences for 11 offences carrying the mandatory death penalty, one of which under Section 39B of the Dangerous Drugs Act 1952. Previously, lawyers and interest groups had called for a moratorium on the execution of death row inmates until Parliament voted on a bill seeking the abolition of the death penalty. It is reported that a total of 1,359 people are on death row sentence as of November last year. Coming up right after the break, Brunei to further reopen its borders, KJ to attend Harvard Ministerial Leadership Program. Right here on TVS Nightline, stay tuned. Welcome back. Brunei intends to completely reopen its land and sea borders on August 1st. The decision, however, highly depends on the outcome of the COVID-19 situation in the country and regionally, as well as the operational preparedness of its border control stations.
A statement published on the Prime Minister's Office PMO website yesterday, beginning 15 June 2022, cross-border travel through land and seaports will be permitted only for essential travel. Among the listed reasons are for the purpose of work or school, which is also extended to commute travels for the aforementioned purposes, transit travels and local or foreign registered transport operators for the purpose of essential import and export supply deliveries. The statement also reiterated that applications for essential travel must be submitted through its website. It added that starting June 15th, pre-departure swab tests for inbound travelers are no longer required regardless of vaccination status. However, travelers who have not completed their COVID-19 vaccination need to undergo the ART testing upon arrival, followed by a 3-day self-isolation, and will only be allowed to end their isolation upon a negative ART test on day 3. According to Brunei's COVID-19 Steering Committee, foreigners and citizens who seek to enter or depart the country must have a minimum COVID-19 travel insurance coverage of 20,000 Brunei dollars for air, land, or sea travel.
Betong's division numerous tourism potentials are simply waiting to be explored. Deputy Premier of Sarawak, Dato' Amarat Douglas Ukahambas said the time had now come for these potentials to be properly identified, developed and promoted.
The Deputy Premier singled out Bukit Sadok, the site of the fortress of Iban legendary hero and Sarawak nationalist Rentap, as one of its potential. Commenting further, Ugas said the state government had recently approved a sum of 15.9 million ringgit to build a replica of Rentap's fortress together with other facilities in Bukit Sadok. On other potential products, he said these included a number of traditional longhouses, the Iban colorful culture, and traditions. These includes jungle trekking and fish conservation programs, or locally known as the Tagang system, as well as the Malay Kampong in Spao, which offers various homestay programs. He added that an airport was also being built at Babuling in Spao for other freight and passenger services. Ugah expressed his hope that the Sarawak Tourism Board could lend a helping hand in identifying and giving proposals on how best to develop and promote these potentials.
Malaysia's palm oil inventories shrank at the end of May as exports surged to a 5-month peak when rival Indonesia halted shipments, although production fell less than expected. Data from the Malaysian Palm Oil Board (MPOB) showed that the stockpile at the world's second-largest producer dropped 7.37% from April to 1.52 million tons.
However, production, which had risen in the past 2 months, slipped 0.07% to 1.46 million tons. Meanwhile, imports fell 33.9%. Exports jumped 26.67% to 1.36 million tons, the highest since December. Traders turned to Malaysian palm oil after top producer Indonesia imposed an export ban that lasted 3 weeks. Nevertheless, the strong export pace is unlikely to maintain in June, as Indonesia has since switched stance and is now gearing up to accelerate exports of at least 1 million tons of the edible oil. Indonesia is making various changes to its export rules to encourage overseas shipments, including reducing overall export tax and levy. The resumption of Indonesian supplies will put a cap on Malaysia's exports from the second half of June onwards, making production figures the key to price action.
Despite rising global crude oil prices, the government has assured that there is still sufficient funds for fuel subsidy. The people's welfare remains the government's top priority, said Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz.
During the launching of the Khazanah Sustainability Framework and Targets, Tengku Zafrul stated that this year's inflation target is still within what was originally planned, which is between 2.3 and 3.3%. As such, continuous monitoring will be carried out to keep track of the global oil prices. Earlier, the government has announced that the amount of the subsidies for this year will reach 70 billion ringgit, which means the fuel subsidy will reach 30 billion ringgit. The projection was made based on the Brent oil price. Meanwhile, he reiterated that at present, the government has no intention of asking for additional dividends from Petronas to bear the subsidy. As such, he added that the government's revenue has also increased, although the increase is not as high as the increase in subsidy.
Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin has been invited by Harvard University, United States to attend the Harvard Ministerial Leadership Program from June 12 to 15. The Health Ministry MOH in a statement today said the Harvard Ministerial Leadership Program is organized under special invitation and Khairi is one of the 12 ministers from various countries chosen to participate in the global level program.
All 12 ministers selected are those involved in the portfolio of health, education, and human development. MOH said the program emphasizes the aspect of leadership as well as focus on interactive and practice sharing of participants through case study discussions and their respective experience in human development and economic progress. According to MOH, the invitation is a recognition of the country and is definitely something to be proud of. MOH said the program is also among the best platform to learn and analyze the experience of other countries, which can be made as reference apart from the opportunity for Malaysia to share its success and experience in managing the COVID-19 pandemic.
Now on to some global affairs. A gunman opened fire on his co-workers at a manufacturing facility in northern Maryland on Thursday, June 9, killing at least 3 people and critically wounding a 4th before being taken into custody after a shootout with police. The 23-year-old assailant, who was not identified by police, was wounded in an exchange of gunfire with a Maryland state trooper while trying to flee in a car. The shooter used a semi-automatic pistol handgun. Washington County Sheriff Douglas Mullendorf said both the suspect and trooper were taken to a local hospital for treatment of gunshot wounds in the latest in a series of mass shootings to plague the United States. Mullendorf declined to elaborate on the circumstances or possible motives behind the attack, but said the gunman and all his victims were employees of Columbia Machine in Smithsburg in northern Maryland. Baidu's electric vehicle EV arm Jidu Auto had recently launched a robot concept car, the first vehicle to be revealed by a Chinese internet company.
Luo Gang, head of operations at Jidu, said the car would be targeted at users who like cutting-edge technologies, stating that 99% of the vehicle's function would be able to be voice-controlled.
这是极度的汽车机器人 Robot 01，它是我们的第一辆概念车，然后它有很多的智能的能力，这是它最与众不同的地方。正是因为它有很多的智能的能力呢，它具有与人交流的这样的一些能力，这样呢让人觉得它不再是一个冷冰冰的车，而是一个真正的汽车机器人，一个 Robot Mate。
Besides equipping the vehicle with autonomous driving software technology powered by Baidu, Jidu will also build 2 LiDARs and 12 cameras alongside the car. LiDARs are detection systems similar to radars, which use pulsed laser light rather than radio waves.
我们这辆车的3个最重要的设计理念是机器人化、未来主义和共情。刚才这个激光雷达呢，是代表了这个机器人化，它能够更好地感知周围的世界，并且能让驾驶更安全。那同时，我们这个车还有很好的语音交互能力。除了这个在车内的语音交互能力，我们超过99%的功能都是可以完全用语音来操控这个车。因为这样的话，在你驾驶的时候用语音操控其实是最安全的。
Baidu's EV making plan comes after tech companies around the world race to develop smart cars after Tesla's success in commercializing electric vehicles. To be manufactured in China's eastern city of Ningbo, Baidu's chief executive Robin Li said last month, Jidu's first model would be priced above 200,000 yen, which is equivalent to 131,600 ringgit.
To start your mushroom farming business, first of all, you will have to acquire specific knowledge regarding mushrooms. To know more about mushrooms, join Gaza Wawe and Fatah Burhanuddin, Sejahtera Asia Tomorrow, with guest Dayanku Kalizawati Awangku Serma, mushroom entrepreneur, 7:30 a.m. on TVS Astro Channel 122 and My Freeview. See the world closer with TVS as we bring you the latest news updates both locally and internationally. Just a click away by heading on to our website at www.tvstv.my or follow us on our social media platforms. That's all the time we have for TVS Nightline. I'm Lorenzo Isaac. Thank you for watching.